Welcome to this presentation entitled The New Gold Standard in PTSD Recovery, the Transcendental Meditation Program, with Dr. Ian Glickman and David Shapiro. My name is Eric Simon. I'm a certified TM teacher in Montreal. Welcome to this session, which has been organized by TM Canada. Today, you'll learn about the most recent research demonstrating that TM is the new gold standard for PTSD recovery. You'll learn how to give a detailed, up-to-date presentation to experts, healthcare professionals, and any group wanting relief from PTSD. Our guests today are David Shapiro, MA, President of the Alliance for PTSD Recovery, co-author of 3 peer-reviewed studies on TM and PTSD reduction. His organizations have helped over 150,000 individuals in Africa and the Middle East find relief from PTSD through transcendental meditation. Also with us is Dr. Ian Glickman, TM governor and trauma psychologist with 40 years of experience, who has helped over 10,000 U.S. veterans, spouses, and their children reduce and overcome their PTSD. During this session, our experts will present the latest research on TM and PTSD recovery, compare TM with various approaches for PTSD reduction, and answer your questions on this gold standard technique for PTSD relief. At the end, participants will receive a PowerPoint on PTSD recovery through TM, which will support professional presentations to all interested groups. First, we'll hear from Dr. David. We'll hear from David Shapiro. David, please go ahead.
Thank you very much for that wonderful introduction. Before we really start giving our presentations, I just like to get some sense for the background of the audience. How many of you are, it's a little hard to do this, but how many of you are TM teachers or governors in the group? How do we find that out?
Maybe they could put it in the chat.
Or put it in the chat.
Yeah, put it in the chat. We're trying to get a sense for how many are TM teachers, how many practice TM, how many don't practice TM, and how many are health professionals who are here because it's just an interesting topic and they wonder how much transcendental meditation helps with post-traumatic stress disorder. So that's a lot of different questions. I guess the way to do this, we've got 20 or maybe 20, 25 people on so far. If you could put your name in and then, are you a TM teacher? Do you practice TM and your professional background? If you can do it, we'll get some sense. It's also very important if we have some non-meditators, if you could please raise your hand, that would be really great. So because, if you're not familiar with, if you don't practice TM, haven't learned TM, then we'll take a little extra time and explain what TM is to everyone in the audience.
David, there's a Dr. Gloria Jacobucci, psychologist, and she practices lots of types of meditation, but not TM.
Okay.
And we also have Dr. Gipal Gagne. He's a medical doctor and a long-time Siddha.
Okay.
And most of the other people, they're all teachers of TM.
Okay, good. So we've got a person who doesn't practice TM, who's a psychologist, did I get that right? And then a medical doctor who's a meditator.
Correct.
Very good. Okay. So we will ask for the patience of the TM teachers who probably know what TM is, and we'll give a presentation with that in mind. One other thing is, for all of you who might like to get regular updates from Alliance for PTSD Recovery, updates means we give we give interviews on new research. We also talk about our projects around the world. if you'd like that, you can just in the chat say, please sign me up for news and give your email address and your name, and we will add you to a mailing list later so you can get these updates. And you can use that, of course, use the updates in your presentations to show the outreach of TM around the world. So that we've discussed a lot, but thank you so much, Eric, for giving me some idea of so far who's participating.
So David, this is Barry. There is a icon at the bottom. It could be different for different people, but it says react. And on my screen, it has a heart, and that's where you go to be able to raise your hand. There's several icons, clapping hands, a thumbs up, a heart. And if you want to allocate one for each of these categories, people could click on that little icon or reaction, and you could see at a glance who's a meditator, who's not a meditator, who's a TM teacher, like that.
Good, good. That's really great. I think Eric knows everyone and said there were only two so far who are one medical doctor who's a meditator and one not a person who doesn't practice TM yet, who's a psychologist, and everyone else is a governor. So I think we got it, but it's a very, very good tool which we'll use in the future. So why don't we start with our I'm going to show you the PowerPoint that we're using. Which talks about how transcendental meditation helps reduce post-traumatic stress disorder. The subject, of course, is bringing reliable, evidence-based recovery from post-traumatic stress, and that is with transcendental meditation. In the structure, what we're going to do is I'm going to speak for a while. We'll have a short video, 15-minute video. It's the documentary on the dramatic changes of TM for people with PTSD in Armenia. There are going to be different types of changes that in many people will have different types of problems. In other words, the changes are about the same, but the problems in Armenia are war related, and that won't be the major problem in Canada. But the experiences are very powerful and you'll enjoy, I believe, with the video. So I'm going to go through the PowerPoint, including a video, and then we're going to have a chance for questions and answers from everyone. And please feel free to ask your questions. Then we'll take a little break for 5 minutes, and then Dr. Glickman will speak, and then he'll have a chance to ask questions, and then have another little break. And then the last section of this symposia this meeting will be a planning session. You will have asked your questions, and then we're going to think, who can we reach out to in Canada? What contacts do we have? Who might be interested? It could be organizations. It could be mental health professionals. It could be medical professionals. It could be military people, any groups that are likely to have problems with PTSD. We'll think together and we'll offer our support to reach out to those groups. So that's kind of the structure of the meeting. So in this PowerPoint, which we're going to give you, we're going to touch on 4 basic topics. One is we'll just review for all of you what many of you may be not completely familiar with what the causes of post-traumatic stress disorder are, post-traumatic stress are, and what the symptoms are. We'll look at the scientific research. We'll look at some experiences of people in a variety of situations, from military to refugees to students to prisoners. We'll look at some of those and see that all those groups do have beautiful improvements with TM. And then later we'll just touch on the areas that we're providing support. So why don't we start with a video called "Ending the War Within." which is again, it's a documentary done by a award-winning award-winning producer and director. Let me see if I can find that. Just a second. Just a second. Okay, so here's the video. We'll just begin it. By the way, is everyone hearing the sound?
Yep, the sound is good.
Good. So the war trauma and the fear of war is dominating the awareness of many or most Armenians.
Transcendental meditation is a simple, easy, effortless procedure that you do for 20 minutes twice a day. And what happens is the brain becomes coherent between left and right and the front and the rear hemispheres. So you think more coherently. The level of rest is 2 to 3 times deeper than sleep. So deep levels of rest get rid of deep-rooted stress and trauma. And because of that, you sleep less, you feel better, you're more self-directed. And that's what TM does in a nutshell. It just makes you happier, more productive, more energy.
Transcendental meditation is a technique that's been taught around the world to over 10 million people in every country, regardless of lifestyle, religion, is extremely effective at reducing post-traumatic stress disorder, depression, anxiety, insomnia, and other mental challenges that can go along with war.
I've just returned from 6 months in Armenia teaching the Transcendental Meditation technique to over 400 people. And I had the great fortune of teaching veterans with PTSD and refugees and children of refugees, taught a few doctors, dozens of psychologists and counselors, and just everyday people in Armenia, this simple, effortless technique. As a woman came to me with her 10-year-old and she could not speak. And she, from the moment she heard that her father had been killed in the war, she stopped speaking. And it'd been like about 15 months she had not spoken. And so I taught her TM, the mother, and some of her friends. And on the second day of the class, we're having a group meditation. And all of a sudden, I heard someone crying a little bit. And then eventually crying out loud, not too loud, but just crying. And I knew it was her. And I go, yes, she's already making noises. Whatever stress was there, just after 4 or 5 meditations, it's now gone. And so she started crying. And then she got up, hugged her mother. She goes, I can speak, I can speak. And she hugged me. And then she hugged her other friends in the room. And then she says, let's finish meditating. I go, okay. So we just sat down and we finished meditating for 10 minutes. And she's been speaking ever since. I was just thrilled for her and her mom.
Ստրեսները երեխեքի ստրեսները, որ ամեն իրիկուն իրենք ցույց ունեն, չգիտեմ, ամեն ինչ շարժը, ամեն մի բանը բացել էլի։ Երեխաները ահավոր ստրեսի մեջ էին, ես էլ դե շատ ստրեսի մեջ էի։ Սա Ղարաբաղում էլ ահավոր ստրեսում են ապրում, ամեն օր չգիտեն։ Պատկերացրեք, պահարանում օրերից շորերից չեն քանում։ Երևի եզակի դեպքերում, որ Շորերը վենք պարկում սամբուկ ճոր ստրեսի մեջ չգիտենք ելն է ես պահին ինչ կլինի ոնց կլինի վախենում ենք չգիտեմ անընդհատ այդ վախը մեր մեջ որտեղ ենք տեսել եք այն որ ոչ այդ պահին որ սկսվեց այդ սնարադները այդ բաները արդեն չգիտենք տրիվոգաները այդ կբորում են կլացում են մեկը վիրավոր ատանկերը քաղաքում ինչ գնում Սամալյոտները չգիտեմ ահավորելի դեպի անբացատրելի սա ստրեսի մեջ էին չգիտեմ հիմա էլ ապրում են դե Ղարաբաղում բայց բոլորը ոնց որ զոմբի ոնց որ սենց ասեմ ստրես մեջներին անընդհատ են գլարված անընդհատ վախը սրտներին որ էսա կարող ցանկացած ժամանակ միակ ճանապարհը փակել ոչ մեկ չի կարա ոչ մի տեղ շարժի ոչ մի տեղ գնա այն որ ասում թե բախ բերումով թե դակադական իմ ու Մայքլը հանդիպել տեղի ունեցավ չգիտեմ այնքան ասում են գնա որովհետև շատ ահավոր վիճակում են ես եւ երեխաները ու իրոք ամեն մեկս էլ մեր ձևով մեր վրա զգացել են հետևություն զգացել են ստրեսից ազատում մտածելակերպի փոփոխում իրոք լավատեսություն այդ ոնց ասեմ նեգատիվը մեր մեջ իրոք էդի զգում եմ որ բաներ կա որ ավելի բան էինք սենց ամեն ինչը մեր վրա սենց նստում էր մտածում էինք գտնում էր կպչուն սենց կպած է բայց մեդիտացիայից հետո զգացի ահագին այսինքն այլ աչքերով ես նայում աշխարհի
Post-traumatic stress disorder, called PTSD, is a mental health challenge, a debilitating mental health challenge that can last a person an entire lifetime. There are soldiers from Vietnam, American soldiers from Vietnam, who still have PTSD 50, 60 years later because what it does is it transforms the brain functioning into a permanent fight or flight response. So without some proper support, the person is locked into fight or flight response with all the negative connotations of that could be a few years, it could be a lifetime.
Within just a couple of weeks, I got to teach this veteran who had been in the hospital for almost a year and a half with like 18 different surgeries and pins and rods in his legs and arms, completely paralyzed on the right side of his body. And after all this time, he goes, I don't know if I want to stick around. He's having all these thoughts of suicide and stuff. And he was a friend of my translator. So otherwise we'd have never known this guy. So I said, yes, let's teach him. I went to the hospital to teach him. And in his first session, the mind settled down and body settled down so deep that he could actually close his eyes all the way. He has never closed his eyes since that drone attack on his truck, which had killed 26 men. He was one of 2 left alive. And he couldn't close his eyes because of the neurological damage. After meditating 3 minutes, he could actually close his eyes for the first time and not let light come in. So after that, then he started sleeping better, and eventually the suicidal thoughts went away, and he's doing really well now. Still in a wheelchair, but no more thoughts of killing himself. Because TM produces your inner happiness as well. It's not just about mental potential. That inner happiness, your inner bliss starts to bubble up month by month when you practice TM.
Անքնություն կար, շատ ուշ կենտրոնանալ, լարվել, ամեն ինչին նայել մի քիչ ջղային տեսակետից, իսկ հետո փորձելուց հետո արդեն ես հասկացա, որ չէ, նայում եմ հարցերին ու ավելի հանգիստ, հետո ես կարացա քնեմ գիշերները, թեմի առավելություններից կասեմ եմ, որ ստապ ռեալ դատում ես, ստապ ես մտածում, են որ են հարցը, որ մտածում ես, որ կարող այսի չլնի կամ դժվար լնի, բայց հետո ինքը կես ստիպում ասես, ինչի հենց դժվար ու փորձես թեկուզ այդ դժվարը հեշտ աշկերով նայես ու կատարես էդի, իսկ ինձ թվում ամենալավը, որ ուշադրությունդ տեղն առնում, զգոն ես ելնում ու դատում ես, կարես ցանկացած հարցի մասին մտածել ու այդ հարցի լուծումը գտնել։ Առավելությունը ես դրան գտամ, որ ոչ թե ինչ որ մի հատ դժվարությունից չղայնանաս ու խուսափես, ինչ որ չստացված բանի համար, այլ դատես ավելի լավ։
There's a very large body of research on transcendental meditation and different areas of physical and mental health. So the ability of transcendental meditation to reduce one's level of anxiety, perceived stress, other mental health factors has been going on and is very consistent over the past 30, 40 years. In terms of trusting, it's not like taking some medicine. You have to trust that side effects are going to be worth the medicine. Unfortunately, that's a fairly typical situation. It's something that is very pleasant to do. It's relaxing. It allows the entire mind and body to settle down to a very deep state of relaxation. It settles the mind from a very active state to a state of lesser excitation. Ultimately, one experiences a unique and very blissful, pleasant level of well-being, where basically one is in bliss.
Կյանքում շո մինոր էտապ, մինոր փուլ է սկսվել։ Եվ դա առանցքացնելու բացատրեց թե ինչ է կոչվելու Transcendental Meditation. Օր, 2-3 օր հետո այնքան ուժեղ փոփոխություններ նկատվեց, որ աշխատանքի վայրում ես գործ ունեմ հիմնականում տեսողության խնդիրներով հանձնացել։ Ինքս նույնպես տեսողության խնդիրներ ունեմ եւ բոլորը զարմացած Գերյուրականից շախմատի դասընթացներ սովորող երեխաներ։ Գերյուրից ինչ հրաշալի բան է կոմոդ կատարում։ Աշխատագիծներս պարոն Ավետիսյանից ինչ փոփոխություններ է կոմոդ։ Դրագանի առումով ավելի է բարիացել։ Հետո մի բան էլ մտածեցի։ Վերջինս ինչ որ չափով հոգսել չէ մենք։ Տեսողության խնդիրներ ունենք, խավն է, պետական կարիքները զգում, մարդու կարիքական, չասեմ կարիքական, մարդու վերաբերմունք, ուշադրություն։ Մտածեցի, որ այս մեդիտացիաների շնորհիվ կարելի է ոչ թե լինել աշխարհի հոգսը, այլ օգնել, որ մեղմանա աշխարհի հոգսը։ Մենք կարող ենք մեղմել աշխարհի հոգսը։
Նախ ես զգացի, որ ինչ որ տարբեր ֆիզիոլոգիական, այսինքն տարբեր խնդիրներ, հոգեբանական մասին չեմ ուզում խոսել, բայց ֆիզիոլոգիական տարբեր խնդիրներ, այո, չի կարողանում քնել, բերանում չորություն։ Որոշվելուց հետո հասկացանք, որ այս ամեն ինչից հետո արդեն շաքար կա, շաքարի առկայությունը, ինչը լուրջ բավականին։ Այսինքն ինչն է հիմնական խնդիրը, երբ որ դու չես կարողանում ինչ-որ բան անես։ Ճիշտ է, այդ ընթացքում ինչ-որ բաներ ձեռնարկվեց, ինչ-որ բաներ, բայց դու չես կարողանում հստակ կենտրոնանալ, հա։ Դու գիտես, որ որոշում ես պիտի անես, վերջ, դա քո անելիքն է։ Չես կարողանում կենտրոնանալ։ Եմ օգնեց, որ մի փոքր ես կարողացա ուղղակի ռելաքս թուլանալ, մի փոքր թուլանալ։ Թեմի կիրառելուց հետո փորձում ենք ավելի վերլուծական եւ ամենակարևորը պատճառահետևանքային այդ բոլոր կապերը հաշվի առնել։ Թե դա ոնց է անդրադառնում արդեն քո հոգեկանի այդ ամեն ինչի քեզ վրա, այդ արդեն խնդրի ուրիշ կողմն է։ Բայց այդ պատճառահետևանքային կապը, այդ միասնական կապը փորձեցինք գտնել։ Հետաքրքիր մի զգացողություն եղավ այսօր հենց դեմի ժամանակ, որ հենց պատերազմի հետևանքով ձեռք բերած հաշմանդամություն ունեցող մարդկանց անպայման սովորեցնել թեմ ու այս լինի առաջնային ծրագրերից մեկը։
Եթե մենք ուզում ենք ինչ որ հոգեվիճակի ձեր ասացի պես որակ ապահովենք, ավելի լավ կլինի, որ ավելի շատ մարդիկ սովորեն, որտեղ դա թեմը ոչ թե թեմի ազդեցությունը ոչ միայն կումուլատիվ է անհատի համար, այլև կումուլատիվ է հասարակության համար, եթե շատ մարդիկ են անում թեմ եւ իրենց հոգեվիճակը բարելավում է, ապա բարելավում է ամբողջ համայնքի եւ հանրության հոգեվիճակը։ Ну դրա համար իհարկե իսկ շատ ուսուցիչներ ունենալու համար դե բարձ է, որ շատ միջոցներ են հարկավոր եւ մենք ամեն ձևով դիմում ենք տարբեր կազմակերպությունների, դիմել ենք նույնիսկ մեր կառավարությանը ժամանակին, ու նրանցից ստացել ենք միայն բանաչ լույս սովորեցնելու, բայց որտեղից որ գա, դա իհարկե մի ամբողջ պրոյեկտ է, որը ունի իրեն ֆինանսական մասը եւ այդ ֆինանսական մասը անպայման դրա հոգը պիտի տարվի, որպեսզի հնարավոր դառնա ՏՄ-ի ավելի լայն ուսուցումը Հայաստան։
I just wanted to give a special thank you to my Rotary Club International, which I belong to. Because of them, I was able to stay not 1 month, but 6 months. They helped support me there, take care of my lodging, my food, my translator. Thank you so much.
What we have now is an evidence-based approach that's extremely rapid and extremely effective. That's published in 14 studies. Top peer-reviewed studies show every single study that it's rapid and effective, and it's effortless, and it doesn't require the person with PTSD to face or grapple with the trauma. Many people really don't, especially young children. It's very hard on them to deal with their trauma. At TM, it's absolutely no trauma-facing program. It's the opposite. You settle down with TM to quieter and quieter and more peaceful levels of one's own awareness until one's gets completely silent and peaceful inside. And the stress released from that brings a person back to normal functioning.
Ցանկանում եմ, որ այս պրոյեկտը մեծ հաջողություն ունենա, որովհետև նմանատիպ պրոյեկտ արդեն շատ հաջողակ եղել է Հայաստանում։ Մենք արդեն դրա փորձ ունենք, մենք գիտենք, թեև տարիների ընթացքում այդ ամեն ինչը այսպես ասենք, հնացել է, գնացել է, մարդիկ տեղաշարժ է տեղի ունեցել, անընդհատ լինում է բնակչության տեղաշարժ, բայց մենք գիտենք, որ եթե շատ մարդ սովորի դեմ եւ հատկապես եթե իրենք խմբովի դա կատարեն, դա մեծ հեղաշրջում կառաջացնի եւ ոչ միայն ես կասեի հասարակության մեջ, հասարակության գիտակցության մեջ, այլև ամբողջ ռեգիոնում։
Flow is important to us.
Sorry about. Good. So that's our documentary, which I said was done by a Armenian award-winning young Armenian producer and director. So we'll just quickly go over the causes of PTSD and the symptoms of PTSD. The psychologist and medical doctor probably will be, very familiar to them, but some of the TM teachers may not be that familiar. Causes. Wow. Okay, so the causes of PTSD really are any highly stressful traumatic event. In different places, it'll be different causes. In Canada, the main causes are automobile accidents, sexual abuse and domestic abuse, and maybe natural disasters, terrorism, war, and violence are theoretically a problem, but Canada is quite a peaceful country. So I actually looked at the Canadian government survey of mental health and stressful events. And they basically, the Canadian government reports that 64% of Canadian adults have had one potential psychological traumatic event in their lifetime. That's quite high. And of those, transportation, physical assault, and life-threatening injury were the three major causes. Among women, it was sexual assault and unwanted sexual experience. But the overall picture in Canada, which is a very peaceful country, is that 7.7% of those reported have been diagnosed. 7.7% of the people have been diagnosed with PTSD, and 6.1% currently have PTSD as diagnosed by a mental health professional. And for our sake, as people who want to help those with PTSD, when we want to think of where to go, people who have been through captivity, which could mean war, it could also mean prisoners. Prisoners consider themselves captive in a prison situation, sexual assault and assault with a weapon. So those would be groups to go to who have more likely PTSD. The actual symptoms of PTSD from these traumatic events are the current Psychological Association of America has 20 symptoms. The main categories in those 20 symptoms include repeated horrific memories. The memories could be in activity, they could be triggered in activity, they could also be in dreaming, that one has those type of memories coming back again and again. Another symptom of PTSD, a couple symptoms of PTSD deal with avoiding events like the original trauma. One tends to avoid people in general, but would also kind of avoid the original events that remind one of the original trauma. One may feel emotionally numb. One may feel negative, great negativity or towards oneself or towards other people. One can have troubles with sleeping or be hypervigilant. And also there could be anger, destructive behavior, and substance abuse among some of the symptoms. So these, as I mentioned in the video, can be for a few years, or if not treated or supported properly, a person could have these an entire lifetime after they get PTSD. So the challenge is that in psychotherapy, there was what's called a meta-analysis, or an analysis of all the high-level studies done on American veterans who had the top two therapies done in the American US VA, which are prolonged exposure and cognitive behavior therapies. And they found through that meta-analysis that only 1 in 3 veterans comes out of PTSD with those two preferred or considered gold standard treatments. So what we draw from that is something more that needs to be done. Something could be added to those things, or something could be done separately, but something more needs to be done. Transcendental meditation has been shown. This is a study of all the TM published TM studies as of recent studies. There are 14 there, and this is looking at the drop in symptoms of PTSD for combat veterans, prisoners, college students, and war refugees who had PTSD. So the drop, in this case, a drop in PTSD of more than 10, you can see that a minus 10, which means there's a drop in symptoms of minus 10, is considered a clinically significant reduction in PTSD. What's important in this chart is that every single one of the published studies, which means it's published with peer review, that the experts look at it and they say it's a good study, every single one of the TM studies has a clinically significant reduction in PTSD. Different groups have more than others, but every study is clinically significant in its reduction. So let's just take a second and review some of the main benefits of transcendental meditation for reducing post-traumatic stress disorder. First, as we showed in the last slide, that all scientific studies show that TM brings big improvements. The second, which we're going to show in a little bit, is that there are significant and sometimes very, very large improvements even in 1 month with transcendental meditation. And we'll also show that it's when we compare it with prolonged exposure, with group treatment, with health education, TM is significantly faster at reducing PTSD. We're going to see that it's not only good or better at reducing, it's the best procedure for best meditation for reducing PTSD, according to a thorough meta-analysis that was done recently, but it's also as good and better than all the standard procedures we've tested or alternative treatments. What's really important, which I mentioned in the video, is that it's non-trauma facing. What does that mean? When one's doing prolonged exposure or cognitive behavior therapy, the person has to think about the symptoms or the effects of PTSD on their lives. TM is the opposite. TM, one goes inward to experience more and more quiet levels, less and less thinking about anything, including about the problems from the cause of the trauma or the symptoms of the trauma. So it's non-trauma facing. That's many people are not comfortable have some levels of discomfort doing treatments where they have to think about what happened to them, and this is not required. It's not in any way a part of TM. Another very important point is that there's a principle of post-traumatic growth, which means after the trauma, how does one grow? And most of the treatments that are done, that are provided, I mentioned 2 of them, but there are many others, try to reduce the symptoms of PTSD. Post-traumatic growth is kind of the opposite. How does life improve? How does the mind improve? How does one get more happy, one more clear, more successful, and how does one's health improve? Because there could be long-range effects of trauma on the body. There could be health, high blood pressure, and so forth. How do those it's not just how do those decrease? How does blood pressure become more normal? How does health become more normal? How does behavior become more normal with other people? So there's a very wide range of post-traumatic growth, and there are actually 500 peer-reviewed studies that show TM has benefits in all areas of life. So we have a very distinct benefit in the way a person grows after the trauma with TM. Another point is that like mindfulness, it's taught many, many different ways, but TM has been taught to 10 million people around the world in the same systematic, uniform way. That's very important so the people can rely on the results. Another thing that's important, and all of you will be given an opportunity to be sent this, what's called the post-traumatic stress disorder checklist. So if you are working with someone who has told you about their traumatic experience, and you're teaching TM, you can give it to them, and it's a self-test for them. They can see this is how I'm doing before I learned TM, and then at 30 days later, I've practiced TM regularly, hopefully regularly, twice a day. What is the change that I report? So that gives them a chance to see what has happened to them since they've learned TM in terms of reducing the trauma they've experienced. And a very important point for the non-meditating psychologist here is that you can continue doing your various procedures, cognitive behavior therapy or prolonged exposure or whatever you're doing, and that TM can be taught along with that, and that'll enhance the benefits for the people you're helping. The very new study that came out in let's see, it's Medicina, done by David Johnson and some other experienced researchers, came out this year, and it basically showed that when you compare transcendental meditation with mindfulness-based stress reduction, other mindfulness-based treatments, other meditation techniques, and with TM, and these are all, they reviewed all the published studies on these procedures that are available in the literature. It shows that TM, the reduction here is a reduction in what's called effect size. Effect size basically says how effective is this procedure at reducing, it's a statistical tool, how effective is it reducing whatever, or affecting whatever is being tested. So effect size of minus 0.8 or greater, in other words, minus 0.8, minus 1, minus 1.2, or minus 1.4, it's considered in general to be a large effect size. It's a large reduction. Effect size changes of minus, let's see, I believe it's minus 4 to minus 6 is considered a medium, and a minus 2 is considered a small effect size. So some little change. So what jumps out here is that for transcendental meditation, whether it's a the yellow is yellow is all groups. The pink is military, and the green is civilians. So for all the three groups, taken individually or together, there's more than a minus 0.8. There's a large positive effect of improvement, and the largest seems to be with civilians. But when we look at mindfulness-based stress reduction, which MBSR, they have a 0.4 to 0.6 in general for all those different groups, and that means it's a medium effect. There is a positive effect, but it's a medium size effect. For the mindfulness-based other mindfulness programs, they seem to have a larger effect of improving PTSD, of reducing PTSD, with the civilian population having the only one with a large effect, a large effect of reducing. The others seem to be medium size, and other meditations also are basically in the medium range. So TM has not only a large effect, but a very large effect. So it's clearly the most effective meditation that's been researched at reducing PTSD. And this chart summarizes the same thing. You can see the p-value, which means the probability of this not being actually, Dr. Glickman will have to explain the p-value. I can't remember exactly what it is, but it basically says the chances this happened by chance. So this is showing the reliability of this. If I understand it right, please correct me. This is a measure of the reliability of the research. So it's very, very unlikely that this happened by chance, that these results were by chance. So TM is, the average of TM is 1.1, which means it's where minus 0.8 is. This again is PCL, the PCL checklist units. So TM is clearly visually the most effective at reducing PTSD, and the other ones were effective, but not nearly as effective. This chart here is very, very important, because not only is it effective, but you also wonder how people are in very great discomfort with post-traumatic stress disorder. This research is showing that how quickly the symptoms are reduced. So the TM is the dotted line in every case. So you see the farther down it goes is the greater reduction in post-traumatic stress disorder checklist, which is a major tool. So with TM versus prolonged exposure, prolonged exposure is the dark line. It's going much more slowly. It's quite close at the end, but TM is helping much more quickly. And health education didn't do that much, and it was also slower. When we compare it with the group support, TM was both much more rapid and much more rapid very quickly. There's a gradual improvement through group support, but it ended up not doing as much and being slower. And these other two charts are what's called waitlist control and non-TM. So TM, the waitlist control shows very little improvement, and if any, and much more slowly. So we see in terms of meditations that TM's the most effective meditation. And when we compare it with other techniques like prolonged exposure, which is called PE here, or patient-centered therapy, PTE, over here, or we looked at HE for health education, or TAU, treatment as usual, which is often some kind of psychological treatment that, that's being given. We see that when we look at effect size, where effect size again means minus 0.8 or greater, shows a large improvement. So the symptoms are going down. Large TM in every case has a large positive effect. Prolonged exposure also had a very large effect, but maybe not quite as large. But the other treatments that were given had medium to small for treatment as usual in this case, and for other treatments it was more in the medium range, and some of them were PT, which was forget what it is. Psychotherapy in that case was a small improvement. So I'd like just to take a second. I've been talking quite a bit and we've watched a video. Let's take just a brief time and see if there are any questions from anyone, from the psychologist, from the doctor, or for any of the TM teachers. Any questions at this point on what we've said or how you'd present it? Anything, please ask questions if you have them.
We have a question. While people think about questions, and you can put your questions in the chat or raise your hand with that raise hand function. I saw a message from Anna Novikov, and it's a question suggestion, and they ask, may I suggest people who have been diagnosed with cancer? I do some volunteer work at Wellspring and have met people who are very traumatized by their cancer diagnosis. And I imagine people who have been diagnosed with other potentially serious or deadly diseases, as well as their caregivers, can be totally depleted and could use TM. Talks could be given at various facilities that support the various illnesses, and naming a few organizations. And then saying the video recently sent out comparing the different styles of meditation would be an important piece of presentation to those in charge. Unfortunately, some of these places offer free support and resources, so figure out a way TM information to be available for people to choose to pay and learn. Do you have any comments on that, David?
Yes, at the end of this meeting, we're going to plan together. Those who would like to plan and think together, we're going to plan outreach where we will be glad to, you can use these materials to give presentations. We will be glad to give the presentations with the TM teachers or the psychologist or with anyone who'd like to give them. Another point that's really interesting you'd like is that in one of the countries in Southern Europe, they are actually doing a research study on TM for reducing PTSD in cancer patients. So it is an obvious problem. People are under extreme tension when they've got these kind of major health problems, and TM would be an amazing help. Another point is that if people have funding to pay this, it's very good for them to pay for TM. If there's people have problems paying, I know in the United States there are special funds that could be available under if a person can ask for a grant. We might be able to help you as well, try to fundraise if there's a program where the people don't have funds and have cancer or some similar problems and would like a hand. So there are a variety of ways to get funding. It's for people in any type of PTSD problem where they're short on money. Money should not be a problem. We want to really help everyone who has PTSD. So anyway, we'll discuss this at the end. It's very good that you brought it up, and please stay and we can think with you how to do an outreach. Any other questions?
We have another one in the chat from the Vancouver TM Center asking, David, can I ask what your opinion is on why TM isn't more integrated into the medical system as a treatment plan?
We would love it to be completely integrated. It's simply a matter of educating, and people, the doctors may not be familiar with it. They may have been taught other things that they feel are good. There's when you're trained certain ways, it may be something very new to them. So they may think that what they're doing is the best. That's why our research is important, to show that TM is a gold standard and that it's non-trauma facing.
Dave?
Yeah.
Can
Ian,
you hear
please.
me? This
Please.
is Ian. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to present a lot on some of my slides regarding the cancer and these questions that all these folks are asking. If you want me, I can just start that presentation now or very shortly.
Why don't we complete this first, and then
Go ahead.
so we touch on the research, and then we will get to it shortly.
Okay.
I think if it's okay, we will get to that soon. Any other comments or points or suggestions? Okay, so we'll just continue with this PowerPoint. By the way, this PowerPoint has many more. Slides than I'm going to actually discuss, because I want the TM teachers are going to be using that to be able to get quotes from prisoners, quotes from refugees, points from military, quotes from and research studies. So if you want to focus on something, you can give those. And in fact, if you want to speak to the military, we can design, or any other thing like that, we can design a special PowerPoint that focuses on the research for that area that you're presenting to. So you'll be really get the maximum impact from your presentation. This is another example of one. This is one study published in Military Medicine in 2017, which showed that this is the drop in the higher the score, the more the symptoms of PTSD. So this over 33 is likely PTSD. So the average score was 53 at that point, and it went down in 30 days for the group to below the PTSD threshold. So this can be, and we had the similar groups with PTSD and Congolese war refugees. Some groups will have a very, very dramatic drop, so they're actually out of post-traumatic stress disorder in 30 days. Some individuals will. Some people won't, because of the long-term trauma or the unique character, or honestly, if a person's a soldier and they've been in a war zone where there's a lot of bombs going off, they may have some physiological changes, some even effect on the brain, and that may mean that the brain has been some damage. It may take longer to have results with TM. Here's just one quick quote from a U.S. veteran who was in Afghanistan. He said, "It was hard for me to ever wind down or get sleep or get some rest. First week I was there, which is Afghanistan, 3 soldiers got killed. I thought, I'm not going to go home, make it home. I started thinking about suicide. When I got back to the United States, my problems continued. I tried counseling, I tried group counseling, I tried 5 or 6 types of depression medicine. When I learned TM for the first time, in I don't know how long, I felt hope. I had tried so many things that had not worked for me. This is the first thing to get suicide off my mind. TM is about giving you a better quality of life and a better quality and a life better in every aspect of what you're doing." So we have a variety of quotes like this. This is something similar to a fireman who had lived his life helping people, and he was also a paramedic, and he had horrible memories and nightmares, and finally he got some sleep after he learned TM. This is a study on Congolese war refugees which I actually organized and published on this one with a team. This is a very interesting study because we were measuring them before they learned TM, and the score, because they were not meditating, their symptoms went slightly up over the 3 months before they learned TM. Immediately after they learned TM, this is in 10 days, there was a large drop in symptoms, and by 30 days they were out of PTSD. So this is one lady who was a Congolese war refugee. In that group, she said, after my husband was killed and I was raped, there was so much pain. I was sick all the time, typhoid, malaria. It was an impossible situation for 3 years. After learning TM, my hearing is back. I can sleep again. Now I function normally again. So these are with people with PTSD, they're very dramatic shifts. We also have tested students. The students, when we compared one group of students at a university who didn't learn TM in red, and the blue are the levels of PTSD symptoms in the people in the group that learned TM, the students that learned TM. So there was no real shift in the non-TM group, and the TM group were out of PTSD in 105 days. And this group of students was in South Africa. Most of the women had been sexually abused, and it was a very poor and violent community. So they had a lifetime of abuse, and even with that long time abuse, within 105 days, they were on average out of PTSD. And also depression. Depression, they came out of mild depression as a group. They came out of that in 15 days with TM. No change in the control group, in the non-TM group. So this is a lady who had PTSD, was a businesswoman in the United States. She said, I was on fight or flight mode 24/7. Any bit of pressure was going to make me shut down or run. When I started TM, I didn't feel that pressure for the first time. Similar for prisoners, a lady who was a prisoner. So that's kind of the summary. Let's take if we'd like, you can take a 5-minute break, and then Dr. Glickman will come and give a presentation. Let me actually, there's a little bit more. I'm going to go by, he's going to talk about the neurological shifts and brain changes with PTM. One little thing is that I wanted to summarize this now, which we'll mention again later, that all the TM teachers will be given this PowerPoint to use and to adjust if they like. We're glad to help everyone with outreach. We can support any presentations you give with you on Zoom. We're going to help support projects you do, either designing them or implementing them, if you and the national office would like. We can help you fundraising as is appropriate. We can also, if you're doing a large project, we can help you with scientific research, design and implementation of research with our team of scientists. So thank you. Let's take a little break for 5 minutes, and then Dr. Glickman can come back and speak about his experience, very experienced at helping people. And he can give his experience and talk about some of the other aspects of TM for psychology and brain functioning.
I think everyone should be back from the break by now. So if you want, you can go ahead, Dr. Ian.
Okay, hi, it's a great joy to be here, and especially talking to Canada, the most beautiful country in the world, in my opinion. And although Tumbo, Iowa has its charms, I would take Fairfield any day. Okay, so I treat a lot of PTSD people. I'm a licensed psychologist and former professor. And a lot of people at the VA. So let's just start at the beginning. As David talked about, the TM is a simple, natural, innocent mental technique where the mind is allowed to settle down. And as the mind settles down, it gets more unified. The brain waves get more coherent. And when that happens, the body settles down because the mind and the body are so intimately connected. And when the body settles down, stress leaves. Just like you get a good night's sleep and a lot of stress is gone in the morning and you feel good after you do TM, the body settles down at least as deep as the deepest point of deep sleep. So a lot more stresses get out. And so even after one session, a lot of very good things start to happen. And TM, I call it, it's a brain technique. It's often been called a whole brain technique because we use our whole brain. And this slide that you're looking at right now is actually one of the most profound slides since the history of psychology, and maybe the history of treatments in all of history, because this does not happen too often. what you see on the left is before TM, and the blue areas are areas of coherence. Usually the brain waves, and you connect all the little points on the brainwave, they're all going at a different phase and a different speed and a different amplitude and a different frequency. When you start TM, during the TM process, this coherent thing on the right is something that's never been seen before. In fact, there's a very famous brain researcher, Lovanov from Russia, who saw this. He says, for the first time, I'm seeing a normal brain. This is what your brain looks like. I want you, and I tell this to my vets, and it's a mechanical analogy, so if you don't understand it, that's okay. But there are 8 parts of your brain, just like there are 8 parts of 8 cylinders in an engine. So if you have a nice 350 small block Chevy engine sitting in the backyard on blocks, it's nice to know that all the cylinders are firing in synchrony. Because if your engine, your 8 cylinders in your engine are not firing in perfect synchrony, in perfect coherence, it's going to run rough. And my veterans get this. They say, yeah, my life is running rough. Yeah, because number 1 and 5 cylinder are banging away, and number 3 and 8 aren't so hot. And so pretend you're driving from New Haven, Connecticut to Stockton, California, and you never know when, or for my Canadian friends, from Halifax, Nova Scotia to Vancouver, British Columbia, and you get stuck in Saskatoon or somewhere because your car's not running well. Well, this is what it's like having PTSD. It's like every day, every time you try to do something, every time you try to use your brain, it's a struggle. And so this chart is so profound. When I was a young boy in 7th or 8th grade back in 1908, there was a movie on TV, and the movie was called the Time Machine, where this gentleman, scientist from 1800 Victorian England, invents a time machine, and he goes into the future, and he sees all these marvelous things, and then he goes back and says to his group, the scientist group that meets, and said, how am I ever going to explain this? They'll never understand. Well, this chart here on the right side is 1,000 years into the future. This is a paradigm change. This operation of the mind, which is the normal operation, is called the 4th state of consciousness. It's the transcendental state of consciousness. Now, that state of consciousness that we get to when we do TM. Most of us are familiar with 3 states of consciousness: waking, dreaming, sleeping. And each of those states has different physiological correlates. So a physiologist could look at a brainwave pattern of someone's asleep and say they're asleep. They could look at someone who's awake, say, oh yeah, they're awake. And they're looking at someone who's dreaming. And they can tell. But that's the physiological objective experience. Each subjective experience has its, as Dr. Bevan Morris once says, each subjective experience, each state of consciousness has its own inner world. And this world, where you're transcending, where you're contacting the 4th state of consciousness, the transcendental state of consciousness is the basic blueprint for our brain for all health. Because in a very orderly situation, you cannot introduce disorder. And PTSD and other mental disorders are disorders, but they can't penetrate the disorder. For example, a lot of people have laser pointers these days. It's very important. They're very popular. And a laser light is just a regular white light, like a flashlight. But except the flashlight is incoherent. It's like our brainwaves. It's incoherent. A laser light is coherent, meaning all the crests fall on all the light waves. All the crests fall on the crest, and all the troughs fall on the troughs, and the peaks. Everything's totally in synchrony. And if you shine a flashlight at the night sky, it dissipates in 50 feet or 100 yards or something. If you shine a laser light at the night sky, it goes on for miles and miles, and nothing can disrupt that orderliness. And that's why this chart here is a game changer for anyone in the mental health field. And if you want to do a little experiment to prove me right, my favorite kind of experiments, go back to your clinic, go back to your hospital, and ask some of your colleagues, do you know what the 3 states of consciousness are? You can give me waking, sleeping, dreaming. Fine. But do you know what the 4th state of consciousness is? The transcendental state. They've never heard of it. Well, they will, because this is the blueprint for the next 1,000 years. And it is going to revolutionize, it already is, revolutionizing mental health. So next slide. Uh-oh, why isn't it going? Oh, it went. I don't know, how did I do that? So this is a brain, okay? Now, the brain on the left is your regular old brain, okay? And the brain on the right is not an abnormal brain. It's not a brain I had Igor drag in from the laboratory last night. This is your brain. This is my brain, but it's just under stress, okay? And these holes you see are what we call functional holes. They're not histological. There's not actually a projectile that made those holes. They're just dead spots when you look at the activity there. And there used to be a saying, in fact, maybe there still is when I was an undergraduate, that we only use 10% of the brain. Well, here it is. You're not using a lot of your brain when this is not functioning. And this is very important to the military. This is very important to anyone, because if you are traveling on an airplane, which brain do you want your pilot to be using? The one on the left or the one on the right? The one on the left can focus. The one on the right can focus. It can do stuff. You get up, you're really stressed, you're having the worst day of your life, you can still do stuff. But anything from out of the ordinary or any exterior stimuli is going to be nullified. In fact, pilots in very difficult situations, or helicopter pilots that are flying rescue missions over the ocean and Coast Guard things, when things get really rough, they start shutting down all types of stuff like their radios, their nav, that. They don't want anything exterior on the periphery disturbing them, because this brain cannot handle it. And this is the brain most people are using day in and day out. So that's why we're not using 50% of their brain, whatever, 90% of your brain. But when you start transcendental meditation, you use the whole brain. PM is a whole brain technique. And here is an image, an MRI. Now, TM is called the 4th state of consciousness. Transcendental consciousness is called a state of restful alertness. That is, you are alert, you are awake, but you're at rest. And look at that slide on the image on the left, and you can see all the red blood flow on the top left quadrant. That's your frontal lobes. That's awake and alert. And thought there was a light. That's okay. and on the right quadrant down here, you can see there's not too much activity. That's the part of your brain that's for blood pressure and alertness and galvanized skin response, everything that keeps you attentiveness, everything that keeps you in activity is calmed down. Okay, so it's restful, and it's restful down here in the alert part, and it's very alive in the frontal lobes. On the right is a gentleman named Herbert Benson, who was a very famous physiology researcher at Harvard. He said, I'm going to invent my own technique, and I'm going to invent a mantra, and it's words, and just like TM, except it's mine, will have the same effect. Well, it doesn't. You can see this is a occipital view from the back. You can see all the red areas, so everything's alert back there. There's no rest. It's just like doing a crossword puzzle. And for some of you who think doing a crossword puzzle is like using your full brain, it's not quite. So here's the coherence chart. Look at the left. look at this part here in front left. That's the front left, left frontal lobe. It's not a big trick to get one part of the front lobe coherent with the part that's contiguous right next to it. So you see that, just sitting with eyes closed, you can do that. It is an impossible trick. It's a Penn and Teller trick to get your left front lobe to connect with the right rear occipital lobe. And you can see everything's connected. This is your whole brain. This is using 100% of your brain. And you know, there's a saying, your 8-cylinder car is purring like a kitten. This is your brain purring like a kitten. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, that's working. And this is, I would bore you with, this is just a chart showing how coherent your brain gets and how quickly it gets that way. We don't have to go into details. Now, let's look at brain coherence and what it means to us in the real world. Let's look at that left, the left column. That's athletes. Take a bunch of athletes, and this is their coherence, just normal coherence. This we're just looking for something here. Let's see. But that right bar, I can't find it. The right bar down here, world-class athletes, okay? Their brain is much more coherent. That's why they're a world-class athlete. I was talking to my cousin. I'm a dual citizen. I'm from Nova Scotia. And so I'm a Canadian citizen and an American citizen. So I was talking to my cousin a while back. And I hadn't talked to him about 30 years. And we have a big family. We're talking about things. And within 5 minutes, we're talking about hockey. And I started to laugh. I said, I know I'm talking Canadian when I'm in 5 minutes into the conversation, we're talking about hockey. And he said, yeah, you gotta mention hockey a few times anytime you're talking to us. So I'll tell you my hockey story. This is very old research, but world-class hockey players, one thing they do is they always know where the puck is on the ice, regardless of anything, regardless if they're in the check to the boards or on the floor, got spun around. They know where the puck is on the ice, and they can then anticipate where the puck is going. It takes that whole brain to do that. That brain, that first chart I gave you. Oops. Now, managers. We've all, not all of us, but many of us have had jobs where we work with managers, and some managers are okay. They get a file on their desk and they're able to get the file off their desk, and that's a pretty good manager. But if you ever work for a top level manager, a top class person, they seem to know everything in advance. What's going to take a long time, what's not going to take, where the holdup is, why you're going to, who to assign to this, who to assign to that, because their brains are more coherent. Everything comes down to your brain. And if you meditate for over 4 years, look how coherent your brain is. It's more coherent than the best hockey player, maybe. And certainly it's more coherent than the best manager. So let's look at brain, the importance of brain coherence. And these are really good studies from the Journal of Neuroscience, okay, and the Journal of Moral Education. Let's start down here with decreased anxiety. PTSD is a disease of anxiety. As someone said, it is a disease of fight or flight. They are in fight or flight mode all the time. They are suspicious all the time. I can't tell you how many times, and I've seen 10,000, literally, PTSD patients, many of them combat veterans. I just should say here that, looking at those charts from Canada, the greatest population of PTSD in the United States and in Canada, I predict, I don't know what that captivity thing was, is ladies who have been sexually assaulted. And I've seen thousands of lady veterans, and like 99% are there, not because of a war situation, but a sexual assault. So the first thing that happens when you start TM in the first day, anxiety decreases. Oh, you know, I was going to say, probably conducted 100 interventions or meetings with PTSD vets where they're standing in the hallway because they don't want to come into my room. Once they're in a room, all their thinking goes, how the hell am I going to get out of this room if something happens? And so they can stand in the hallway, that's okay. And they are suspicious. They're suspicious of everything. When I was at the VA hospital here in Iowa City, I'd have to go down to the 3rd floor to get my patient. And my office was on the 9th floor. We ride up in the elevator, and they hated that. And then you get to my office, and I always ask them, are you always the type of guy who's always kind of looking around, you know, for escape routes and how to get out of places? And this was a young guy. He was 22 or so. He said, Doc, I knew where the escape panel was for the elevator when we were coming up the stairs. And I said, there's an escape panel? Or no? I don't know. Then going clockwise, transcendental consciousness, there's a lot of incredibly positive mental health things associated with that. We'll get to it later. Consciousness orientation, kind of the same thing. Neurological efficiency. I'm sorry, I'm losing my voice here, but neurological efficiency is how good your brain's working. You know that brain we saw, the stress brain and not stress brain, which one do you think has more neurological efficiency? That's a trick question. It was the one without the holes. Creativity. PTSD patients are very, very uncreative. They are in fight or flight mode. And the more stress you have, the less creativity you have. The stress is a killer of creativity. So what happens? They start to freak out and they do something silly or crazy and they get in trouble, and that makes them more, you know, more prone not to leave. Most of the vets I saw stay at home, they live at home, they try to work from home, they order all, I mean, this is not uncommon. They order all their groceries online and it's delivered to home and they don't leave. And that's why we started doing telehealth for many of my patients. They're not creative enough to figure this out. But I had a friend down the road in Fairfield, Iowa, who had a vet, and the vet started TM. And every time he and his wife would come to the session with the psychologist, he would start off and said, "You're not going to believe this, but I was able to sleep. I was able to do this. I was able to do that." It's incredible what happens when you're using your full brain. If you're only using 10% of your brain, for God's sakes, it's like using one finger in all your 10 fingers. Can you imagine going through life using one finger and all of a sudden the other ones start to work? Concept learning, very good. A lot of these veterans, anyone with PTSD, or when I say PTSD, it could be another disorder like depression or anxiety or sleep disorder, panic attacks or whatever. They want a life. They don't want to live in the basement. They want to go back to school. They want to learn how to be a carpenter or a plumber or a lawyer or something like that. And so this concept learning is very important. And the next one, academic performance. They want to be able to go to college. And one of the big problems they have now here at University of Iowa, we have a very good enlightened kind of college where there's a lot of veterans just coming back from one of our many, many wars. And the teachers often will accommodate them, let them sit in the back of the room, let them sit by an open door, don't mind if they just have to leave. But the fact that you're sitting in a classroom worrying about how to escape if a terrorist comes in isn't going to help you pay attention to your math course. Moral reasoning. What happens when the brain's not working well? You don't have moral reasoning. I'm going to get into that a little bit more. And your emotional IQ is like in the dumps, okay? So your whole brain is very important for moral reasoning and social moral reflection, like knowing what to do in a social situation. You don't just like stand 10 feet away from the person and looking around and then escape whenever you can. every patient I had, 10,000 kids and families and veterans, I go through a little checklist. And one of the things I ask is, how's your self-esteem? And when I say that, they either laugh or they cry because their self-esteem is horrible. And there's a subset of self-esteem called self-efficacy, which we won't get into now because we have a time constraint. But self-esteem is the little voice when you're sitting in a class or in the office at a meeting, and the professor is saying, and in this class, we're going to do this, we're going to write a paper, you have to give a speech, you have to do it. And there's a little voice in your head. And it's either going, I can do that. I can do that. Yeah, I can do that. That's good self-esteem. Self-esteem is kind of a binomial yes, no, off or on kind of thing. When you have bad self-esteem, poor self-esteem, no, I can't do that. I can't do that. No way, not even going to try. See, so there's the big difference. And that's why the whole brain transcending to the source of thought, where the mind is virtually at the point where all the laws of nature are. It's called the ground state. And many people have had an experience of this whole brain being completely in sync. And then maybe they're in a walk in the woods or sitting by the beach, and they've explained this, they've said it to me. Doc, the whole universe was just like there. I felt like I could do anything. I was in tune with the nature and everything like that. It doesn't have, it can happen anytime. It can, I mean, that can happen while you're sitting in traffic on the LA Expressway, as well as in the mountains, on the mountain street. However, the incidences of it happening on the LA Expressway are much reduced than the mountain street. All right, come on, why would this go? Okay, alcohol reduced. I was studying with a very famous PTSD researcher in, outside the University of Pennsylvania. And he was a very, very acclaimed researcher. And this was during my internship. I was on the PTSD inpatient unit. And he said, Ian, it's really even hard to diagnose a true diagnosis of PTSD unless there's a substance abuse involved, which I don't agree to, but it doesn't matter. Many, many, many people with PTSD seek alcohol to relieve their symptoms, essentially. And when you start TM, you have reduced days of alcohol use, fewer days of heavy drinking, reduced stress, reduced craving. And I want to explain why that is. A friend of mine, I'm going to show the book, it's called Self-Recovery, written by TM Sidhoff, the brilliant David O'Connell. And he shows very clearly, and there's all types of research now to support that when you're under stress, which you are when you stop drinking or using a substance, cortisol increases, that's the stress hormone, it increases in your system. And serotonin, which is the happy transmitter substance, decreases. And serotonin is extremely important for so many things. It's even extremely important for your posture, the way you stand. Many people probably know about the new antidepressants such as Prozac and Paxil and Zoloft. They're called SSRIs, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, because they keep a lot of serotonin in the brain. But what happens when you're doing TM, it really pumps out the serotonin and it decreases the cortisol. So that's why you can do this. Most programs have a very low incidence of successful recoveries. I'm sure everyone has heard of AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, okay? So let me read a quote from the co-founder, Bill Wilson, from Alcohol Anonymous about TM. And he says, TM is an amazing kind of meditation for those in treatment, and it works well to help someone in recovery. It's easy to learn, it's effortless to do, and once you learn it, you can, what you are doing can feel and you can see it working. The daily practice quiets the mind. Instead of struggling with the monkey on your back, the monkey mind, he calls it, you can feel yourself settle down and go within. After TM, you feel more calm, intuition is better, easier to make decisions. It gives me a lot of equanimity and serenity. That's serotonin speaking. That's the serotonin speaking, not the alcohol. And not only during meditation, it goes on to say, but afterwards. So this is the founder of AA saying what an incredible thing. And if you have a rehab program and you want it to be extremely successful, introduce TM. And I'm going backwards. I'll look this way. Okay, just a quick chart. You're more resistant to stress if you meditate, because like that laser light, a laser pointer, if you shine a flashlight on the laser beam, no big, it doesn't do anything. Water off a duck's back, it can't get in. It maintains its integrity. It maintains its coherence. And so that's what transcendental meditation is. Oh, God. So a lot of people with PTSD, especially severe PTSD, don't make very good decisions because they're using that brain with the big holes in the front. And they get in trouble with the law. And there are a lot of programs now, especially in the United States that I'm aware of, that teach TM. They teach TM to the inmate. And when you learn TM, after 3 years, the recidivism rate, which is typically in the 90s for inmates, is 47%. So it is terribly successful. And this is versus counseling, rehab counseling, and various religious types of meditation. If you do TM, you have a reduced risk of heart attack. Even health education, don't eat this, do this, exercise, whatever, isn't nearly as effective as doing transcendental meditation. And veterans do have a lot of cardiac issues because they are under so much stress. And PTSD does not go away. And when I first started, it was not unusual for me, this is many years ago. I think David showed this chart. Basically, no matter what instrument you use to measure PTSD, and this last one is depression, TM works hands down, is better than all of them. That's all you got to know with that chart. All right, and what happens in your behavior because these vets are not behaving well? Actually, they know they're not behaving well, and they try to completely avoid behaving at all. That's why they isolate. They don't go to a meeting, and a vet will come to me and say, you know, I have this Monday morning meeting. It drives me crazy. I have to sit there with the group, you know, stand around with the group or sit, and I have to give a little talk about what we're doing this week. And he said, I can't handle it. It's too stressful because of all the people. Well, anger goes down, harmony goes up, positive social interaction goes up, and giving goes up. I want to talk about giving for a minute here. We call giving in psychology, we call it altruism. And altruism or giving is the most important fundamental aspect of having a relationship. You're always giving to the person you have a relationship with, and they're giving back to you. This is a social relationship or a business relationship. And if you had a friend that came over and they're just sitting there like a lump all of a sudden, yeah, you're not contributing, you're not giving. What's going on? And if you want people to interact with you and want to give to you, you have to give. Famous social experiment conducted many years ago, where they had two young people come to call it some laboratory in a college, and they were told that they were going to participate in a psychological experiment about looking at art and what painting they like best, which of course is a lie. If you ever participate in a psychological experiment, it's never what they tell you. We're always trying to trick people. So they're sitting there in a hot room waiting, and finally one of the students there waiting who is actually a confederate of the experimenters. He's part of the experimenting team. Goes out. He says, "I'm going to get a Coke." He goes out and buys a Coke for 10 cents. That's how old this experiment is. And he comes back and he has a Coke for the other person. He says, "Yeah, I bought your Coke while I was out." And it's hot, so they drink the Coke. Then after the experiment, they go look at the pictures, whatever. After the experiment's over, the confederate, the young student who's actually part of the team, asks the other student if you'd like to buy a raffle ticket from his frat for $1 that they win something. And they do 2 groups of these experiments. One person gives someone a Coke, one does not. Well, the person who gave 10 cents to the other person, much more likely to have someone buy that raffle ticket. You'll see this in advertising all the time. They're always trying to give you free things so you'll feel obligated. And it's a little bit off the point, but sociopaths and con men and people with anti-personal social disorders, personality disorders will tell me that the hardest thing about taking advantage of something is find some way to give them something. But anyway, so that's the crucial role of giving. And these vets don't give until they start meditating. All right, this is just how resilient you are to stress. And by now you're kind of getting the picture that you are extremely resilient. Oh, by the way, this PowerPoint will be available to anyone who wants it. So I'm going through it quickly. All right, TM and other things for increased self-realization. TM, of course, is the highest. Second is mindfulness, but I just a couple months ago, I can't get the study, I'm trying to get it. Mindfulness wears off very quickly. Like in a month or 2, or even in 3 months, most of the results of mindfulness don't show up. And it can be, ornery to do. You have to kind of always be thinking something positive or changing a thought, like CBT. TM is nothing. You do it and you forget about it, and it just stays with you. It's like you wash your clothes, the clothes are clean for a few days or a few months or whatever, but then you can wash them again. You don't always have to think about, I have to wash the clothes. Mindfulness, decrease negative emotions through TM. Maybe you're getting the picture here that TM, this orderliness of your brain, makes all good things manifest and all bad things like smoking and alcohol kind of float away. And if you want to be like the #1, this actually happened to me. This is a downside. If you want to be known as the great therapist, have your patients do TM, because TM does all the work. Now, everyone still has, grief issues or a marriage issue or, some stress at work, these things when we're adept at taking that. But the big things, like the brain holes, close up, and people say, wow. And this happened to me. I worked at a residential treatment place for kids, and I would do TM and other kind of things. And I started saying, oh, this is a very hard case. We have to give it to Dr. Glickman. So that's the downside. We'll get all the hard cases. But it doesn't matter. TM will take care of it. Meta-analysis of 3,000 people, TM, mindfulness, all this. TM's better. That's all you got to know. All these slides have references. You can look up the reference. Another trait anxiety. Trait anxiety is and state anxiety as well. Very high in PTSD, depression. Even people who are severely depressed always have anxiety. So this can be used for anything. It doesn't matter how depressed you are. We've actually gone into mental health facilities, and taught people how to meditate, and they improved tremendously. And I've seen this hundreds of times. All right, you can see TM always is better. That's all you got to know. Always better. Reduce symptoms. Let me even come out. Why is that? Okay. Oh, here it is. This slide's not coming up. It's a transcendental slide, but I'll tell you, all the studies that are done with TM, and right here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There's 7 studies. when you compare PTSD symptoms reduction, it's always better to mindfulness. It's always better than prolonged exposure. I've been trained in prolonged exposure. I don't like it. And you're just exposing your patient over and over again to the trauma that's hurting them. And I really would never, I don't like it. Some people like it, and that's fine. I've been trained in it. I've also been trained in EMDR. In fact, I was trained in EMDR. That's eye movement desensitization. I was trained in it by the person who invented it. And I used it a lot. But TM, nothing's going to compare to TM. Oh, now it's coming up. I got to do this. God. All right. What are we decreasing here? Symptoms. Just showing the recommended way to do transcendental meditation is twice a day, not once a day. If you do it once a day, you get some pretty good results. If you do it twice a day, you get better results. Now, someone was talking about caregivers earlier, and a question about caregivers. And caregivers are under a lot of, and this is done with nurses, okay? They're under a lot of stress, and they come down with something called compassion fatigue, which is like PTSD light, but it's still very disturbing. And you can see red bar, blue bar, that TM decreases anxiety by 31%, depression by 31%, anger by 36%, confusion and 19%, and fatigue. So anything bad with these disorders, TM, I mean, it's kind of a blanket statement, I know, but I invite anyone to look at the research and prove me wrong, because I've been, doing this for 50 years, and it's always the same. And I haven't even gotten to okay, so here's the summary. Am I doing? I'm okay. TM reduces anxiety and improves creativity and brain functioning. Duh, we know that. Increases energy and happiness, lowers cholesterol because cortisol and stress increases cholesterol. Blood pressure, obviously, will decrease. And many of my friends have, I was just talking to a friend the other day. He said he went to the doctor's blood pressure was high. Like he ran into the place and it was high. And he said, that's unusual. He said, can you measure it again in like 5 minutes? And the lady went out, she meditated. It was like way in the normal way. Cardiovascular disease, life expectancy, that's the wrong thing, sorry. And individual and organizational effectiveness. I do corporate psychology, corporate consultant for government, US government, and Fortune 500 companies. And I was a professor of corporate psychology for 10 years. And I can tell you, the first thing you want to do if you're a corporate psychologist is get the people starting TM. And I'll tell you another thing with this serotonin thing I was talking about. Serotonin is so important for happiness and orderly thinking. And research is just coming out. I'm just hearing about it literally last month. And I've heard about it 20 years ago, but now there's studies that if you are let's say you're a non-meditated there listening to me, and you're sitting in your office working, and you have 3 or 4 people practicing TM down the end of the hall in a room, their serotonin is going to increase because of their orderly brainwaves. But the research is now showing your serotonin levels will also increase. The effect travels through space and time because they're at the unified level. And we can get more into conflict resolution and world peace studies later. But we don't quite have time now. Let's go here. Doctors and healthcare providers notoriously have vicarious PTSD. I mean, I've seen 10,000 patients. I've listened to like 30,000 horrific trauma stories. And after a while, it can get to you. And it's called vicarious. You don't even know you have it. But all of a sudden, you're looking around for suspicious people, things of that nature. But if you do, so we want to reduce burnout in caregivers. This is for teachers. I did a TM workshop in TM and Ayurveda, which is a offshoot of TM, you might say. At University of Connecticut, I saw 500 teachers. They were getting their master's degree. They were participating in my research. And so the payoff is I gave a workshop for them twice. They are under a lot of stress. Teaching is a very stressful occupation these days. That's why you don't want to do it with the brain with all the holes in it. You want to do it with the fully functioning brain. I saw a survey of 40 years ago or 50 years ago. Teachers complained that the biggest problem in their school were kids talking in the hall between classes and chewing gum. And you look at now, the biggest concern of teachers is if someone has a gun or someone's overdosing in the bathroom. Very different situation. So for this, the physician one, burnout decreases a lot. Burnout is actually 3 separate diseases. The first one is depersonalization, the lack of enthusiasm, and just the not caring. I'm going really quickly through this, I'm sorry, but burnout decreases. So many people have burnout these days. I remember before computers, people say, oh, the computer's going to come make your work so much easier. You'll have so much spare time. It didn't work out that way. When you have a computer, you actually have to do more, especially if you're not a tech person like me. All right, let's look at this very important hospital admissions. Actually, a friend of mine did this study. He's a Ph.D. in insurance use. For childbirth, pretty much even. Apparently, conceiving a child isn't like a very stressful event, so that's about the same. But intestinal disorders go down markedly. Admissions, ENT go down markedly, which is very important. We just had a pandemic that was basically an ENT and lung disorder. So there was a research, it reminds me of a research that the viruses and the bacteria in your body actually decrease when you're doing TM because of the orderliness of your body. Heart disease goes way down, urinary things way down, injuries way down, because who gets injured more? The person with all the holes in their brain, or the person with the smoothly functioning brain? Tumors, not as many bones and muscles, ill-defined conditions. There's a great body of research now with people of various types of chemical sensitivities and mystery diseases. Something's wrong with them, they can't figure it out, but they get better. And let's just go here. All mental disorders. I just have 2 or 3 more minutes. All mental disorders, admissions decrease. Nervous system, they decrease. Metabolic things, infectious disease, a little bit. And those are the most important ones. Insulin resistant type 2 diabetes is in the United States, it's an epidemic. And because you become, it's a prodromal situation where you don't realize it. It's before you get to full-blown type 2 that you're not metabolizing insulin the way you should. And so TM helps with that. Because, as I said, in general, anything bad, and Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, who was the founder of the TM movement, who brought TM to the West from India, where it was taught, said he wasn't a scientist per se, and he did not speak in scientific terms, but he said, when the mind becomes orderly and you start contacting that 4th state of consciousness, where everything's orderly, it makes the body orderly and nothing can disrupt it. So everything good will increase and everything bad will decrease. And that's like comparing a flashlight in one hand and a laser pointer in another. The laser pointer is undisturbable, but if you put another light at the flashlight beam, it will interfere and make it even weaker. Indestructible. Perfect health. Oh, now the PTSD people I see, they want a better life. They don't want to live in the basement. And it's very hard for them to go back to school, even though they're young and they want to go, because the symptoms of PTSD, the fear, the anxiety, the hypervigilance, the nightmares and night terrors and poor sleep make it very hard to do so. And they drop out. and they don't graduate. But here you can see this the publication called Education. 48% of the people graduated, and 73 TMers graduated. And look at the dropout rate is just incredible. And I know I started TM when I was my first year of college, and I hated it. I hated college. Actually, my second year, I guess. And I dropped out. And I just didn't like it. And I wasn't doing well. And I started TM, and I was meditating for a while, and went and got involved. And I went back, and I was a straight A student, which I've never been in my life. And got a master's degree, straight A's, PhD, straight A's. And my professors reached to come to me and said, "Will you talk about this?" Or I said, "You're coming to me?" I said, "Yeah." I was thinking of the old me, not the new improved TM me. Okay, blood pressure. So TM really reduces your blood pressure. Muscle relaxation, that's that thing where you feel your toes and you feel your knees, and then you relax your legs, and you're like, it doesn't do much. And for some people, about 10% of the people who do this progressive, it's called Jenkins progressive relaxation technique, it's actually stressful. And so stress management, biofeedback. But if you do a couple of these techniques at once, it makes you more stressed. It's very funny, ironic that doing too many stress reduction, blood pressure techniques will increase your blood pressure. But that's the chart. This was published in Current Hypertension. I didn't make it up. Now, the American Heart Association says the Transcendental Meditation technique is the only meditation practice that has been shown to lower blood pressures. All other meditations techniques, including mindfulness, are not recommended in clinical practice to lower blood pressure. And that's from the Journal of American Heart Association. All the bad things, high blood pressure, heart disease, headaches. I see a lot of patients with TBIs with traumatic brain injuries because of your Jeep tips over or the bomb blast and knocks you out. It can cause a little brain injury, and they get much better. And the headaches associated with it will improve much more rapid if they're doing transcendental meditation. Biological age, energy, and strength go up, get better. Good. Here's the thing. Cortisol, the bad stress hormone, during meditation goes down. It starts to go down a little bit before meditating, because most people, when they're sitting like that, waiting to meditate, will start kind of meditating. So it's a little confound in this, but that stays with you, that lower cortisol, it stays with you. And if there's another line up here for serotonin, it would go like this, up and like that. You want some light reading? Hormones and Behavior, I'll recommend. This where the study is done. Mindfulness and oh God, I'm sorry, I did this one. Mindfulness with anxiety and TM. TM works better. TM works better than any other technique for reduced anxiety. And I'm very curious because placebo usually is a very powerful technique. If given to someone by a person in a white coat who has some authority and with some confidence that this is a good pill. In fact, when I was in my doctoral program, I asked one of my professors, as a psychologist, I can prescribe medications, of course, but can I get some type of license just to prescribe placebo? Because they seem to work just as well as anything else we do. But TM works even better than the placebo. Mindfulness, blood pressure, we know. The sympathetic nervous system is the fight or flight nervous system. The parasympathetic nervous system is the relaxation part of the nervous system. So when you get less nervous, you don't sweat, your skin resistance goes up. That's a sign of relaxation. Respiration rate goes down, of course. Lactic acid or plasma lactate is produced with muscle exertion. And it is a sign of relaxation. That's why a lot of athletes do TM. You'd be surprised at how many athletes do TM. Oh, I can introduce hockey again here. My friend, this is years ago, taught most of the New York Rangers, he's from New York, New York Rangers how to meditate, and they loved it. And for those tennis fans, Novak Djokovic, #1 rated tennis player, is a very strong TM meditator. Yeah, oh, my favorite chart, younger biological age. This is from the Journal of Neuroscience. If you're meditating for over, God, it's 2 or 3 years. It should be written down, but it's not. Unless I wrote it down. No, I didn't. If you're meditating 2 or 3 years, you're about 4.5 to 5 years younger than your biological age. If you're meditating over 5 years, you're 12.5 years younger than your biological age. That's by David, who presented before me. You don't realize that he's 108 years old. Okay, so these are just some EEG things. Alpha is what you want. Alpha is the happy state. That's down here. It's called automatic self-transcending. It's that whole brain all together, no holes in the brain. You have to produce alpha 1, 8 to 10 megahertz. Open monitoring, that's mindfulness, where you think about something. I don't like this, I'm going to think about it this way. I'm going to think. It's thinking. That's your normal thinking state. And focused attention, where you concentrate on relaxing your feet. Okay, and that's gamma. That's like, you know, playing Tetris or something. People play Tetris anymore. Maybe doing a crossword puzzle. And that's it. That's it for me. I will, if I can get out of this, open it to questions. Thank you very much for letting me speak. It was a real joy, really a joy to be here. I will take any questions if I can stop share. That's what I should do. And there I go. Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Glickman, and thank you, David.